Hey guys, it's Zoe from Ignite here. Before I start with today's video, just thought I'd let you know, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell for post notifications for when we upload a new video. Today we'll be looking at Act 2 from Waiting for Godot, so I hope you enjoy today's resource. So Act 2 of Waiting for Godot begins almost identically to the first act, but in this act what's different is that the tree has grown 4 or 5 leaves. So I guess this kind of symbolizes that whilst everything appears the same, there has been some sort of change, but it's not completely recognizable. So it begins again with the two characters, Vladimir and Estragon, and Vladimir has some sort of memory of the events of yesterday. So he remembers the tree having no leaves on it, and he kind of brings this up with Estragon, but Estragon, either because he's suppressing the memory or because he has erased it, I suppose, from his memory, cannot remember the events of yesterday. So this sort of begins the act with a sense of doubt, I suppose, in both the audience and in Vladimir, of whether there was a change from yesterday. I suppose we as the audience can perceive that change, but these characters don't seem to be able to. So it opens with an interesting question of perspective and looking at the idea of change in a post-nuclear age and how that's recognized by citizens. So we meet Pozzo and Lucky once again, but there is a change in their characters as Pozzo is now blind and Lucky is now rendered dumb. So it's interesting to look at how the power dynamic changes between Pozzo and Lucky in the sense that it really doesn't. So whilst this does have an effect with Pozzo being blind and Lucky being dumb, the power dynamic between the two characters doesn't really change very much, with Pozzo still being very much superior to Lucky and having that sort of moral blindness guide him. However, there is a relationship of dependence established more between the characters where Pozzo does rely on Lucky to a greater extent to kind of guide him through life. So that could potentially be a commentary on how, whilst there are still power hierarchies that exist within our civilization, there is kind of a dependence on the silenced and the oppressed to sort of guide us through daily life. Both these characters don't have any memory of meeting Vladimir and Estragon or any of the events of yesterday, which is an interesting idea to continue exploring in the sense of asking why Vladimir might have this knowledge of the events where no one else does, and what this kind of says for how we as a post-nuclear civilization remember things, and how history and the knowledge of the past has been drastically altered with the advent of nuclear weapons capable of mass destruction. So then the boy from the day before comes again and tells Vladimir and Estragon once again, Godot won't be coming today, but he'll definitely be coming tomorrow. And at this stage, Vladimir openly questions the boy, kind of, I suppose, starting to doubt whether Godot will ever arrive, saying, do you remember meeting us yesterday? The boy has no memory of yesterday, or rather chooses to suppress it for, I suppose, maybe the good of Vladimir and Estragon. But it's clear that there is this sort of cyclical relationship between the days and what fulfills everyday life. And I suppose looking at that, it sort of shows our life in this contemporary era as inherently following the same pattern every day and having no sense of purpose or ultimate direction. And then the act ends with the same question of, well, shall we go? And yes, let's go, but still the characters don't move. So I suppose looking at this, there is still this continual hope for waiting for Godot, waiting for some sort of salvation or purpose to arrive, but the play very much establishes that there is no inherent purpose in waiting, but still humanity does. So I guess that's an interesting question for you to ponder when looking at the themes in the text. So now going on to some key scenes. So I guess something that's worth noting is that this act has a much more significant emphasis on violence and beating, where Estragon begins the play with a sense of fear and dependence on Vladimir for comfort because he alludes to this beating that had happened and continues to kind of reference this violence, which seems to be meaningless and like non-directed. So I guess that's questioning with the advent of the mass conflicts of World War II and the context which Beckett arises from in the Cold War, what this futile, meaningless violence means for society, and how we respond to violence. This is an excerpt from the opening scene where Vladimir sings a sort of rhyme relating to this indiscriminate violence, where it reads, "A dog came in the kitchen and stole a crust of bread, then cook up with a ladle and beat him till he was dead. Then all the dogs came running and dug the dog a tomb. He stops, broods, resumes." So I suppose looking at this, it kind of looks at how we as a society sort of hold violence to this high esteem in a sense, and there's this kind of romanticism towards violence and desire to celebrate it, which I suppose derives from Beckett's criticism of violence used in World War II and then seen with the advent of nuclear weapons in the Cold War. So looking at how we have a perverted sense of violence as deserving to be commemorated, with the idea of digging the dog a tomb. So then another key point to take away from this act as a whole is the idea of memory, and memory as subjective and sort of malleable with what individuals choose to remember or leave out. So I guess it's seen in Pozzo's, "I don't remember having met anyone yesterday, but tomorrow I won't remember having met anyone today." So I guess this looks at the idea of memory as suppressed, and I guess that links back to the idea of in a post-nuclear society, there's a desire to suppress trauma and past history, which is, I guess, detrimental to humankind, and this desire to kind of continue to endure through, oppressing all pain and suffering. And then I guess another example is from Vladimir, who says, "I don't know what to think anymore." And Estragon then says, "I can't go on like this." And Vladimir says, "That's what you think." So I guess an interesting contrast between both those characters is that Vladimir seems to understand the idea of life as cyclical and purposeless, but Estragon still can't grapple with this. So there's a sense of Vladimir is trapped in this sort of suffering, but not being able to express it to anyone else, which is kind of an interesting contrast to look at when looking at characters. There's also an idea of transformation, as I mentioned earlier, with Pozzo becoming blind and Lucky being dumb. So as I mentioned, this doesn't really change the power dynamic, but I suppose it kind of does show another example, like the 4 leaves growing on the tree, of there being slight changes from day-to-day life, which kind of give it a bit of interest and excitement, but these changes aren't always recognized by everyone, and they don't have an overall effect on the way society is structured, because there's still very much a hierarchical structure in the relationship between Pozzo and Lucky. Lucky is still very much silenced, and Pozzo maybe is just more dependent on Lucky. And then I guess going back to the finishing lines, there's this idea of Godot still being a mystery. There's no sense of resolution, which I think Beckett does deliberately to showcase that life doesn't have a resolution. There isn't a story arc which we as humans adhere to. And I guess it does reinforce the futile nature of this post-nuclear society where all ideas of truth and structure have been stripped away. Grand narratives, religion, all seems meaningless, and we're just constantly engaging in this cycle of actions with no inherent direction. So that's it for Act 2. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and turn on the post notifications if you liked this video, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you do like the content, subscribe to our channel and we'll have more videos coming your way.
That's right guys, thanks for watching, and please make sure you check out our online resource database. We've had a team of state rank achievers and heads of English put these together for you, covering everything from essay structures and examples all the way through to craft of writing and comprehension skills. So check them out at ignitehse.com.au, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.